You're listening to the Save the Date podcast, where we talk all things weddings, jewellery and romance. With love from Cullen Jewellery.
Hello and welcome back to the Save the Date podcast. I'm Sheridan.
And I'm Juliette, and we are so happy you're here.
Today we have a very exciting episode. You may have noticed already if you're watching this on YouTube that we do have a third person here today. So we are joined by the lovely Chloe from Chloe Abotomey Photography. So welcome, Chloe, to the Save the Date podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
That's okay. We are, very excited to have you here. So before we get too much into the episode, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and I guess how you got into the wedding industry?
Yeah, sure. So I actually have a bit of a funny story. My mum was a wedding photographer.
Oh, wow.
So I started really young. And you know what? I didn't want to shoot weddings ever. It just felt so high pressure. And it's, it's people's wedding day. It's such an important day. And I was just like, no thanks, Mum. I'm good. And then I shot my first one and I got a little bit older, shot the first one by myself as lead. And I just totally fell in love. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. And then I got a bit older and I studied and moved away from kind of photography as a career. And then just kind of came back into it. It was just one of those things that was just, it was never going to stop. I was going to do it. I just didn't realize that was for me. Yeah. Anyway.
That's so lovely. So how long have you been doing wedding photography for?
So I've got two little ones. So I've had to take quite a big break from shooting lead and running my own business. But I kept up the whole time, just second shooting and working for different companies just to, keep the skills, keep the trends and just fostering my own approach to weddings and really focusing on what I wanted for my clients and for their wedding day. So it's been about 2 years now that I've been just slowly building my own brand. And now this year, both my little ones are at primary school. So I was like, okay, I'm ready now. Yeah, that's it.
Well, I suppose that really nicely leads into our next question. Can you tell us a little bit more about your personal style and why you like shooting in that way?
Yeah, of course. So I am like the most indecisive person in the world. So for me, it was never about finding one style. It was about kind of weaving the things that I really loved into my own unique little creativeness, I guess. And so I really so before my mum was a wedding photographer, she was a photojournalist. And so I spent my entire childhood kind of going to different, protests and different events that she would be having in the paper. And so that kind of approach that was really, candid and actually capturing moments as they happened was so much of my early childhood that it just I just love it. But then I'm also quite a creative and I like to plan things. So bringing in that editorial side as well was just the two things that I love. So I really just mix the two of them together and find that happy medium between really, luxurious editorial looking images mixed in with the authentic candids of documentary and really capturing those moments of all of that emotion that you have on those wedding days. So
awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of me.
Like during say a portrait session that would be typical for a wedding, would you do like stylized shots for that and then the more documentary natural kind of thing for the rest? Or
kind of again, it's not really, each isn't segmented into each part. I bring the two together in every single part of the wedding. So often my clients, I'll meet before with them and we'll go over how they want their ceremony to look on camera. It's usually just a discussion and maybe we'll go to the venue and they'll say, we love this part or this. And so then that brings in the editorial side for me because there's a plan there. And then the moments come from the emotion that's being shown. And it's the same with portraits, right? Because I kind of, I'll set them up and give them some direction and then let them interact with everyone around us. I don't take my bride away from her space or the getting ready or her bridesmaids. It's just, I kind of let it unfold with a little bit of guidance on, making sure that we got chins up and all of the things that really help and have you looking your best on camera.
Yes.
But it's still really important for me to capture the day as it is, right? Because that's what you want. You want those
authentic
memories and to have that authenticity.
Yeah, 100%. I guess one of the biggest things that we want to talk to you about is film photography.
Absolutely.
It's something that you offer that I don't think a lot of photographers kind of offer at the moment, at least not yet. So can you talk us through your film photography and I guess its significance in wedding photography today?
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting one because there's been such a resurgence of film, right? You kind of see, you see it everywhere. Everyone's got little disposables again, and it's really interesting for me because I learnt to shoot on film. My mum had a dark room at our house, so we learnt the chemistry side of it and actually how to process
Is it
film.
water, or what did they put it in?
A lot of different chemicals.
Yeah.
That's a simple way. Simplified. It's a really important part of my creative process.
Yeah.
That being said, digital's incredible for its own reasons. So that's kind of there. It's really important for me. And it's just become so popular. And I think especially for weddings, you see a lot of people kind of wanting that film aesthetic or the colors or maybe the nostalgia. I'm not really into play of all of it. And it's just become so popular again. I know that Euphoria was shot entirely on 35 millimeter. So after that, there was because that's how, have you seen?
It's kind of got that vintagey look. That makes so much sense. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, so there's just been this boom, and I actually worked in a film lab just while my kids were little, and just part time, just to keep those skills and keep doing what I love, really. And we saw so many weddings come through, and that whole trend around the disposable cameras that was huge. It's kind of dropping off a bit now, which I'm grateful for because the waste involved with disposable cameras is huge, and it's a big problem. And also, like, so often you'd be processing them and people don't turn the flash on, and so then couples are going to be getting back not that many photos, not that many good ones that they were able to use, but it's quite an investment, right? It's quite expensive. The film at the moment is very expensive. There's such a huge demand compared with the supply, and the people actually making film, there's really only one company, so they've got the monopoly on it, and it's getting quite expensive.
Yeah, that is very true. I asked for a cheap film camera for Christmas a couple years back, and then I went looking for the actual film and I was like, it's nowhere.
There's none.
I went into so many shops and they had signs out the front saying none available, none available, and I was like, oh, well, this is annoying. Haven't even been able to use it properly.
I think we went 7 months without film back in when I was working in Auckland. And part of it's where we live all the way down here, just trying to actually get it in, and COVID and all the supply issues, but it's still hard to get the right film. I mean, that's a whole process on its own, choosing the right stock for what you're looking for creatively. It's all it's really hard.
So can you talk about some of the unique benefits or qualities that film photography brings to wedding memories compared to, I guess, traditional digital photography?
It's quite tricky, I guess. The way I like to think about it, and I think this is quite helpful for people who aren't photographers, is I like to compare, film versus digital, kind of like watercolor painting with oil painting.
Oh, yeah.
Still painting, still made of paint, but completely different in the way that it looks, when it's capturing exactly the same scene. So that's kind of a good way of thinking. They're two separate mediums, and really they're two separate skill sets because, with digital photography, half the work is done post-processing, and it's a beautiful creative process, wonderful. One's not better than the other. With film, it's more in the choices you make, the film stock, how you actually shoot. It's so much more intentional because in a standard roll of film, you got 36 shots, and that's it. And so you're not just going to be going click, 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 and hoping for the best. It's a very particular art or technique or that kind of thing that makes it quite different. So in terms of the benefits, I think you'd get those. If you choose the right photographer, you're going to get really well put together images that capture the moment because you know, and that's it. So yeah, that kind of benefit because they're really intentional. The colors are beautiful. They offer that nostalgic look, you know, like when you go and look through, you know, your parents' photos or your grandparents' wedding photos, they've got that just like that feeling, and you can it's like you can feel it, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I just find film, and I know a lot of people have said this, that they love that that idea of creating these memories that are going to last, and their children will look through and they still have that same, you know, the way the colors are. And I just think they're really beautiful, and film can be a lot more flattering. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, like the way that it captures, you know, skin and just people in general, there's like a softness to it that's still, you know, a sharp photo, but there's a softness that's really just, it's subtle and it's beautiful, whereas digital, it requires a little bit more effort to make sure that everyone's little lumps and bumps are not right there on display for everyone to see. And I think that's important on a wedding day.
Yeah, I never thought about that.
Yeah, me neither.
Now that you say it, I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah,
I think that's part of the like the hype, right? But also like when you think about how popular B-reel was, it's the same kind of thing. It's not as curated, you know, you're not taking 10 photos and then looking through them like obsessing over it. It's just, it's in that moment, it's real, it's what actually happened. And you know, can't change it really. I mean, you can, but why would you? Basically.
I think that's something that I kind of like about it as well, is how you mentioned you only have, you know, 36 photos on a film reel. It's like the exclusivity of it, that like that's it. Like I know when I was talking to my parents about my wedding photography, and they were saying, oh yeah, we had, you know, 3 film reels and that was it for the whole day, and that's all of our photos that we've got, whereas you get back, you know, 1,000 images.
And often, you know, I don't know if this was your experience, but you'll get a lot of the same kind of picture. It's a bit exhausting. And when you're trying to show people your wedding photos, you know, you're just like scroll. Or if you do happen to get an album, I love albums, so I offer them to everyone, but it's just not quite the same.
100%. Definitely. We still haven't printed any of our photos yet because we don't know which ones.
So it's okay.
We don't know which ones to pick because there's so many of like very, very similar that like, well, which one does my nose look better in? Or
that whole thing.
Different
right. Whereas with film, you don't have that. It's just that's it. And there's some joy in that. I think.
And the beauty and the slight imperfections that it's just in that moment and that's it.
And you get that with film as well because you're not going to be editing, and there's always like slight differences in the chemistry, or you know, even the temperature of the chemicals that are being used can impact it, or if you know the actual film is left in the chemicals or even, you know, less than 10 seconds longer, you know, it changes the way that the image is. So you do get all those imperfections because it's a hand process. Somewhat. There is a, you know, industrial level kind of for commercial film labs, you know, but there's still a lot of actual handwork in there. That's once it's done, that's it. You know, you're not changing it again. That's, once your role's developed, there's no going back. It's done. That's finished. Which is a bit scary.
It is.
So I don't think I'd ever shoot weddings only on film.
That
is
just in case.
Something goes wrong and then you're done.
Wow.
This might be like a bit too much of an in-depth question, but can you talk a little bit about the actual process of developing the film?
It's different for each, you know, so black and white is a different chemical process to color of like color negatives, and then you've got color positive film. So there are a lot of different processes, I guess. So I guess it's easiest for me. I process my black and white at home, which I just think is really fun. I love doing it. And for me, you know, I don't have a dark room. You don't need one. I've got this like a bag, and you just put your hands in, and you have to do everything by feel, which is really cool.
That's cool.
It's very tactile. I'm a very hands-on person, so that really works for me. But yeah, it's different depending on each film, so it's quite in depth. So
Yeah.
we
How
could
does
do a
it-
whole other
yeah.
process.
How does it actually get from that little film roll to like a actual image? Like
Okay.
how does it? What's
Yeah. So yeah, no, that's okay. That's a good question. So what we do is in a dark box, or it can be done inside the machines that they have in commercial film labs. But say for at home, I will put the little roll. I bought one, but it doesn't matter. Into the bag with some scissors and I've forgotten the word for it, but you roll it onto a big roll. And you do it all in dark. So we actually pull all the film out when it's not in the light, because otherwise it's going to be ruined.
Yeah.
So everything has to be done in the dark when it's that raw, undeveloped film strip. Pull it all out, and then you roll it onto a reel, I guess. And then it goes into a light, like sealed canister. So no light's going to get in. And then we pour in the different chemicals, shake it up, leave it in there, and then you pour the chemicals out, you give it a good rinse, and voila.
Wow.
So that's
so
kind
cool.
of how it works. So the way film is made is it's kind of, there's emulsions of different chemicals and things on top of each other, and when like the light sensitive surfaces, I guess. So when the shutter on the camera is open, it lets in the light, which forms the image onto the emulsion. Because you've got, when something's in front of you, you've got, it's being blocked from light on this side. So that's what's going to make, say if it's a person, it'll make that shape.
Yeah, right.
It's amazing. It's
wow.
like I really nerd out on the whole thing, and getting it from in here out to here is trickier. But
It's so like it almost seems more complicated than like digital cameras. It's like how did they come up with that first? That's so cool.
yeah, it's a really interesting and unique way to capture things. Right? And just so like, I don't even know the word, but it's really intricate, and
It's an art.
It really is,
It's
which
an
is why
art.
I say it's two different skill sets. Like it's two different mediums. So when couples are actually choosing a photographer, if they want film, I think it's really important to find someone who actually knows what they're doing, because there has been an influx of photographers who've kind of jumped on the bandwagon and just checking out kind of point and shoots, and that's fine if that's their creative process. I think for couples, if you want to really get your money's worth, because it is an expensive addition, it is, but you should look for someone who knows what they're doing, who knows the process, who understands film as its own medium, not just as a throwaway extra on top of a package.
Not just like picking up a disposable camera and adding it on.
Exactly. Or which again, if that's your vibe, you do you. But I think if you do actually want quality images, you need to look for someone who knows what they're doing and really is passionate about it, because it's its own world. Really.
Yeah, well, I can definitely understand how, like, you obviously know the whole process from, like, taking the photo to actually getting it developed. If someone doesn't know that, that can definitely affect the quality of the photos that they're going to be taking if they're not then, like, they don't know how the photo is actually taken. Because I didn't have a clue that was how it worked. So, like, even just that, if you gave me, like, your camera with all of your settings, I'd still not be able to get the exact same thing as you, because I don't understand the light kind of thing behind it.
Yeah. It is definitely a different way to doing things. I mean, there's definitely, like, it's still photography, so there's going to be a lot of crossovers, but the little nuances are really, they can actually be really important and mean the difference between really good quality film images and less so.
Yeah. So you mentioned briefly about how it is a bit more of an expensive investment. What goes into, I guess, the pricing of film photography, and where does it sit in comparison to digital photography?
So have you had a photographer on before? No, you haven't?
Not in a long time.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, as well.
So going into the pricing of wedding photography, it's really interesting, because so many couples it's really hard to break away from the focus of just the wedding day, right? Those hours. Say you book a photographer for kind of 10 hours. There's also, 80% of the work is behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you guys are quite used to.
Yeah.
So that's a whole thing that I think is hard to understand, or is just not known about, really, that there's a lot of work before, there's a lot of work after. And so you think of those 10 hours, you need to also think about the other 30, 40 hours that we're spending. You're paying for experience, you're paying for quality gear, you're paying for all the insurances that you need as a wedding photographer, which there's a lot. So all of those different things. And then when we add on film, so you're paying for rolls of film, and professional quality film at the moment, I'm hoping it'll come down, is roughly, anywhere between kind of $35 and $40 a roll for one roll. So 36 images. Plus then you've got the processing, which I send a lot of mine, not my color film anyway, to a lab, because I don't do that at home. It's a less forgiving processing.
Yeah.
Just like steps involved, and I'm just not going to do that. But that's going to be around an extra $25 for us. Plus then you've got postage or travel to get to the lab and all of those extra things. So you're looking at kind of, what would that be? Like for a 10-hour wedding, say if you shoot one roll per hour, which is typically what I do, that's an extra $750 of just the raw costs, not including any of the time that the photographer is going to be spending on doing all of that as well. So that's kind of what we're roughly looking at just for the add-on.
Yeah.
And that'll be on top of a digital package, because you would probably want to do both.
Yeah.
Personally. So it's definitely an investment. And not, it's something that definitely has to be considered. But if you were thinking of doing like the disposable thing, you're going to be looking at about that much anyway.
Yeah.
And so it would be far more cost effective to actually hire someone who knows what they're doing, and you're not just going to get a whole bunch of blanks black because half your guests forgot to turn the flash on.
Yeah.
Which is it's really upsetting.
So do you need the flash on for every photo?
You don't, but with disposable cameras, they're not overly sensitive. So pretty much, unless you're outside on a nice bright sunny day, or pretty much if you're outside on a nice bright sunny day, you don't need the flash. That's fine. Even if it's like a little bit cloudy, you'll probably be okay. Inside, even in the day, even with lights on, that flash needs to be on. Nighttime, the flash needs to be on.
That's a good tip.
And for the disposables, you guys have used them?
Yeah.
It's like a hold down, and then you got to wait till the little light goes really bright. And at a wedding, like guests aren't doing that.
Yeah.
Why would you bother?
Especially after a few drinks.
Exactly.
I think
no one's remembering. No one is remembering to do that. So, that was one of the ones that, when I was working at the film lab, you'd get someone would bring in all of their disposable, and they have like 10 or 15, and you'd just think, oh no, it's a wedding. And then you'd process them and you go, no flash. Oh, it was so upsetting.
Yeah.
Just thinking of those couples, but
that's funny. Did you come across quite a few funny photos doing that?
Yeah. We were talking about that like only last week or the week before, about how like whenever people see one of those like disposable cameras, they'll just like go crazy with them.
Oh yeah.
And like
I've seen some things that I really wish I hadn't seen. Like I didn't need that in my life. Whoever took that picture, don't do that again. There are people working on these, but we don't want to see them.
All right. So a few more general questions. What is your biggest tip for couples who are currently trying to find their wedding photographer?
Research and talk to the photographer. Really important. If you can meet them or if you can Zoom with them, do that, because you're going to know if you're going to vibe with them or not. Because as the wedding photographer, you spend most of the day with the couple. Like half the time we spend more time with the couple than they spend with anyone else. So you want to make sure you really like them and you're going to not clash personalities. That's really important. I think that's the most important.
Yeah.
And then just making sure that you like their work that they're showing. I've heard a lot of people, they'll be unhappy with an edit or unhappy with something, but photography, it's an art form. So your photographer, if they know what they're doing, they're going to be really consistent with how their images look. So making sure that you actually like the images for what they are, and if you don't, that photographer is probably not right for you. And try and find someone else who really aligns with what you're looking for. Just in terms of things like colors, or the way that they pose or don't pose, or how they compose images, or all of that kind of stuff is really important just to look at and have a good chat with them about. Yeah,
it's definitely like one of the big things that I noticed was like two photographers might have such a similar photo in a similar location, but like they look so different because the editing process that they go through and the colors that they bring out in the photos is so different. And that was like what I guess drew me and my husband to the photographer we chose, because we liked the way that she edited them. But yeah, I definitely think that's like such an important thing to consider.
Definitely.
So kind of on that same sort of note, in terms of like making sure that you get along with your photographer as well, are there any red flags that a couple should look for in a photographer? And likewise, are there any red flags that you look out for in couples?
Definitely. So for myself, if I'm being approached by someone who clearly doesn't value my time or doesn't value my opinion, then I'm not going to be the right fit for them. Because I work in a very particular way, and I have clients that I want to make sure that I'm being valued for me, because it is a very personal thing as a photographer, the images you take, and it is important that you're being valued for what you do and not what someone else does and what you don't. So that's one. Or if someone, say, is kind of emailing me a lot with like, well, this person does this, why don't you offer that? That can be really hard. And it's hard to say no to people. But also it is really important, because you do want to have the right fit. Otherwise it's just, you're not going to get the images you want. So I would say red flags for couples would be just kind of checking in that they're really passionate. And I think you'll know when someone knows what they're doing. Watching for pricing is really important, because if it looks like a really good deal, there's probably a reason for that. You really do pay for the experience of the photographer. For a wedding, it's so important, because there's so much on a wedding day that happens or goes wrong, or any of those things, and you need to find a photographer who knows how to manage that and knows how to pivot and go, okay, this isn't happening, so we're going to do this. And can really, and that's it's all an experience thing. And when you do have an inexperienced photographer, they can get really stressed out by that kind of thing, which is normal. That's just, again, it's just experience. So yeah, just looking out for that. And if you're not worried about that kind of stuff, that's all good. But yeah, the price will indicate how experienced your photographer is and how well they're going to take your photos.
So what goes into, I guess, the planning process prior to the wedding? So when a couple comes to you, what does that look like, I guess, leading up to their actual wedding day? Yeah.
Okay. So for me, again, it's a really personal thing. So every photographer does it differently. For me, I always like to meet with my couple, whether it's, like a Zoom meeting or a, in-person meeting. I like to get a feel for them. I like to hear their story. I want to know what they're about, how they met, how they got engaged. I love all of the details. I'm a real empath, so it's really important for me. It makes me work better because I know what they're like, and it's just really nice to get to know people that you're working with. So that's my first thing. Like when someone inquires with me, I'm like, okay, let's meet. That's important. It's, no obligation. It's just to see that we're going to fit, because that's the most important. After we've met, we run through what they're really looking for, or during when we, in the meeting, what they want out of their wedding day. Because everyone's different. Every wedding is different. And I think that needs to be respected. I think that's really important, that the couple are getting what they want. It's not a photo shoot, it's their wedding. So that really has to be taken into consideration, and what their priorities are, what they really want. Some people really want to focus on the family side of things. So we do a lot of family photos. Some people are more interested in, things that the couple are experiencing on the day. So yeah, just getting all of that information really helps me be able to know kind of going in what I'm going to be focusing on for the day. So yeah, then we meet, then photographers will always or should always send a contract. And contracts are really important because it outlines the couple's rights, really important.
Yeah.
But also the photographer's rights, which are equally important because, you know, it is our work and it has to be represented as our work. So people adding filters and stuff on top is it does a real disservice to photographers. So yeah, it's just outlining those things and things like cancellations or anything like that should be really, really clear on when if you need a refund, who has paid what, you know, all of those things. Because if a photographer cancels on you, that's a lot. It's really hard to find another one in the right time. That's really stressful and you should be offered a refund. But having that all clearly written out so everyone understands what's going on, really important. So another red flag, if you haven't received a contract from your photographer, get one. We usually take either a deposit just to hold in that space because for us, you know, there's only a certain number of days in the year for weddings. And so when we hold a date, if say you have kind of said, yeah, I really want to go with you, and then we are declining other people, and then you go, oh, actually, I've changed my mind, that really hurts our business. So yeah, that's a thing. Some people take it really depends on the photographer what that deposit looks like, but that'll usually happen, and then that's it. We've locked in. Personally, I would take the rest of the payment up until a month before the wedding. They can do payment plans. They can pay all at once. It's really up to the person and what their budget looks like. Then yeah, that's that locked in. So then I like to do kind of aesthetic consultation, which sounds really kind of funny. But there's just things that, and it, again, comes from experience, but things like table settings on, you know, the bridal table are really important because if they're too high, they're going to hide the couple. Yeah. And that's not good. That's really hard. And then things like colors, just making sure that they are not clashing, or usually if you have a stylist or a wedding planner, they will know and they will have worked with a lot of photographers. But if you don't, that's where I really come in and go, here's what we need to do, or let's just have a chat about it, make sure that it's all going to look really nice on the day, because the photography kind of becomes your memory, right? Do you have that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Was your wedding day like a total blur? And then when you look back, that's where...
I have no idea what happened on my wedding day until I look back at photos.
And then you look at the photos. So it's really important. Yeah. It's really important that it is a good reflection of the day and that you are captured in the right way. So yeah, we chat about that. I don't really cap my couples at them contacting me. I like the planning stage and I like working with them and making sure that my couples are really feeling really confident about the entire thing, because it just takes so much pressure off. So weddings are stressful. They're really stressful. And if you don't work in the industry or you don't know really much about it, I can't even imagine what that must be like. It's so confusing. Yeah. So yeah, just running through everything just is really helpful for them. And then timeline planning, which is also super important because you need to plan out the timeline with so much extra time. Everything takes longer. Did you have that on your wedding day? Or did it
Ours went pretty smoothly.
Oh, beautiful.
But I think mainly it was because we didn't have like a bridal party or anything. It was just like me and my partner. I got to the venue 2 hours before the wedding. He got to the venue like 45 minutes before the wedding. And then it was almost to the point where it was 10 minutes until the ceremony and they were like, do you want to just go now? Because everything's ready. Or you guys see here.
Yeah. And then it was good to go.
Yeah. So we were very lucky, but I know that not everyone has that luxury.
The wedding I did on the weekend, hair and makeup just happened to go over. And luckily they had done a really beautiful spaced out timeline with extra little pockets of time, which is perfect. We love that. Doing stuff like that, because again, that's not something you really think about it. And I mean, some venues are really amazing with how they plan everything out. I just shot at Inglewood. love that.
Yeah.
They did an amazing job with the couple and just having everything timed so well. And those little pockets of flexibility were fantastic. And it's really important, and people don't really think about it. You know, you're trying to jam everything in, but you need those little, nice spaced out little moments for the bride and groom.
Yeah.
So important and really underrated, right? Like, because it's such a big, busy day. So just having those little, tiny little moments are really important. So yeah, really focusing on that with the couple. And then I'm just there and they can contact me or anything that they need. Then the wedding day comes, I get there, we take the photos, we have a great day.
Yeah.
And then it's really becoming very popular to give sneak peeks. So I do within kind of 24 hours, so that it can be shared and all those things. So yeah, that's within 24 hours, and then 6 weeks is the turnaround time. I'm a bit of a perfectionist and I like to work against the clock, so it's usually before then, but that's just in case you need that buffer. And then I organize albums and all of the bits that you want. I really like to just focus on, again, what the couples want. That's really important to me, so just organizing all the little bits that they're interested in.
That's awesome. I love that you offer like albums for everyone, because I just wish that I have gotten one at the very start.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, might end up like me and
Honestly,
don't have one.
Most people do, and that's why I did, because I just love that. I love looking. I still love looking through albums. Like,
same.
Yeah, it's a really special thing to do, and I want that for my couples. I want them to, when they have friends over, bring out their album and show people. Yeah. And then that takes away that decision fatigue. That's what it is, decision fatigue.
Yeah. So what is your favourite part about being a wedding photographer? I'm sure you've sprinkled it in throughout the whole episode, but
I love weddings.
Yeah.
Like, you guys have seen the movie 27 Dresses?
Yeah.
I'm basically Katherine Heigl. Honestly.
Yeah.
I love it. I was planning my wedding dress when I was like, I don't know, 7. I do these little drawings, and I'm not married yet. It's been on the back burner because I'm a wedding photographer. So I'm, again, very indecisive. Haven't planned it properly. So can't nail it down yet. But I love the whole thing. Every moment, all that emotion. I love the humanness of it. I love how vulnerable people are, when the groom cries, when the bride's coming down the aisle, that's my favorite thing. I love it. Like, it's just because you don't really see that. And they just have this moment of total raw humanness that I love, and, openness, and when they're saying their vows, and you just feel all of that. Like, I'm a crier, so often I'll be
so
like,
am I.
it's so beautiful. But yeah, that part, the party afterwards is always really fun, and you see everyone having such a good time and just really celebrating all that love and family and coming together of different people, often different cultures. That's really special. I love the whole thing. Like, I really do.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to pick.
Pick a favorite.
I can't pick out the one bit. I really can't.
I mean, this next question might be even harder then. Do you have a favorite photo you've ever taken?
Ooh, that is such a tricky one. I have a few. So some of them are just going to be the ones I'm a real type A person. So it's going to be some of my real technical ones where I'm smashed it. And then some of my other ones that are, again, showing that humanness. So I had one bride and she had beautiful bright red lipstick, but when her and her partner kissed, he was
no.
And it was just one of those classic moments that were just so perfect and beautiful, and it was just so funny and so cute. And he wasn't, and so then she was kind of wiping it off, and it was just so special. And you got all of the guests laughing and really feeling it. So that was another one of my favorites.
That's so
sweet. It was so cute. And they were just one of those couples that were just so in love and so just happy to be in that moment where it's just all the feels.
That's so special. Is there anything that you have got a photo of? So say particularly on your film, that you've taken a photo in like a strange kind of moment and not really known if you've actually captured it, and then you've like got the film back developed and you're like, oh my God, like I actually got that photo of that moment?
Definitely a couple of times. So there's some, lighting situations that are particularly hard. My film camera doesn't have a flash.
Okay.
So there's various different things I can do to kind of offset that. But there's been some situations where I've chosen to try and capture it on film, and it's been a risk. And it hasn't been one of those moments, they're not one of those really integral ones because it's too stressful to do that. But just one of those really, just one of those special moments where I was like, oh, this is a bit dodge. And I had a really slow shutter. So any kind of movement that I would make would result in a blurry photo. And it's been like, so one of the techniques that you use when you have a slow shutter is you hold your breath when you're taking the picture.
Oh, yeah.
And you kind of lean against something else if you're not using a tripod.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those really in the moments where I'm not going to grab out a tripod, I'm just shooting by hand. And I had to, it was something like, I don't know, 1/8 of a second. And that's very slow. Where I've just gone, oh, I'm going to do it. and I got it and I was like, oh my gosh, I did it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, oh, it's probably going to be blurry. Like, don't put too much hope in it. And that side of the imperfectness of film can be a little bit interesting, I guess.
Yeah. That's so cool. So Chloe, thank you so much for joining us today on the Save the Date podcast. It has been an absolute pleasure having you. Can you please let all of our listeners know where they can find you, your socials, your website? Yeah,
cool. So, such a struggle with my last name. But my website is just my name, chloeabotomey.com. Instagram, it's Chloe Abotomey _photography. That's me.
Perfect. Well, we will have that linked in the show notes for everyone, so you can just click on there and it'll take you right to Chloe's accounts. But yeah, that brings us to the end of this episode. So thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Save the Date podcast. We hope you learned something new, and if you're currently planning your wedding, congratulations, good luck, and have fun.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you follow or subscribe and leave us a review wherever it is that you're listening.
Make sure to come and connect with us on our socials at the Save the Date podcast and join our Facebook group, the Save the Date community. We hope you have a wonderful day or night, and we'll be back with another episode next week. Bye.
Bye.